Hello, everyone. This is Dana from Dev Device, and today I have a special guest, a long lost friend from Phuket. His name is Mike Swigunski, and he is the founder and best selling author of Global Career. Welcome to the podcast, Mike.
Yeah, it's really great to connect, man. It's been a number of years, so looking forward to catching up and kind of sharing what's been going on in our lives the past few years since we were in Thailand together.
Yeah. It's been many years, I think 5 or 6 or so, when we are joining. I was joining a mastermind by Empire Flippers, and Mike was one of the people organizing this thing. So that's how we met in the first place. And it was a rather beautiful setting and environment and also event to meet up. So yeah, it was really unforgettable. And yeah, and here we are now, like 6 years later, we eventually catch up again. You have been traveling a lot, right? I see you on Facebook. You're like everywhere on the planet. Right now, you are where?
Yeah, so right now I'm in the Republic of Georgia in Tbilisi, and yeah, I've
Oh,
been traveling quite a lot over the past decade. Celebrated my 100th country in Baku,
oh.
Azerbaijan. So I had a lot of fun going there with some friends and just finding any excuse to celebrate, kind of. So yeah, it's been great being based here in Georgia, and essentially I've been based here for over 3 years. Have you ever had the pleasure of visiting here?
I have been nearby. I lived in Kyrgyzstan, but Georgia itself, I haven't visited now.
Okay. Yeah. So basically, I was living in Colombia and things were great there, but I was just looking for somewhere a little bit safer, somewhere where, the visa situation was a little bit more welcoming. And yeah,
Mhm.
started looking at a lot of other places, and multiple people suggested to look into Georgia and see if that would be a good thing for what I was
Mhm.
looking for at the time. And one of the
Mhm.
big attractions is you can come to Georgia for 1 year on entry with a passport. You get 1 year. There's
Right.
around 30 or 40 countries that are eligible for this. So after that year, you can go across the border and come right back for another year. So it's one of the
Hmm.
most welcoming countries in the world for foreigners.
That's amazing.
Uh, and they're quite welcoming to a lot of different nationalities. It's not just Americans or Western cultures. There's a lot of other developing nations that they allow to stay for a year.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
that was one main reason. The other reason was it was one of the safest countries in the world, statistically as safe as Switzerland, and
Oh.
a really high quality of life, kind of European culture for the best price. So for me,
Mhm.
it seems like the best place in the world where you can get the highest quality of life for the best price. A lot of things have changed over the past couple of years with the war with Russia and Ukraine, but that's essentially changed the dynamic for a lot of people who are trying to come here today. So luckily, I'm grandfathered in for a lot of that stuff. But yeah, it's definitely shifted over the past few years, but it's still a great place to be based out of.
Mhm. And there must be a lot of digital nomads and people in Georgia who you can communicate with. So I guess the Georgian average person would not speak English, really.
So it depends on their age. Most, the main language is Georgian, but the second language, if they're from an older generation, is going to be Russian. If they're from a younger generation, which is most of my friends, their second language is going to be English.
Mm.
But pretty much it'll be one, two, three Georgian, English, Russian, or Georgian, Russian, English. It
Mm.
really depends on the person, what age group they fall into and their family
All
and,
right.
and a lot of other factors. But yeah, the language barrier is not really much of an issue. And one of the cool things is like it also attracts a lot of expats who are spending a longer time here. Like in Thailand or Colombia, you get a lot of people that come in town for, you know, 1 month, 2 month, 3 months, and then they leave. But here it's not as transient where because the 1 year visa attracts a lot of people that are looking to plant roots because it's so much easier to plant roots here. It also allows you to build a stronger, more firm community. And that's something that I was really looking for. So basically, I came here for a month to try it out. The pandemic started. I got stuck here and was stuck here for, well, like literally the borders closed, so you couldn't leave, and spent about, I think it was like 450 days in Georgia. So it was actually pretty amazing because I got to explore the country at a time where no tourists were allowed. It was all local prices. Everywhere you went was like, you'd go to the most popular place in the whole country and you'd have it all to yourself. So it was a really unique time to travel. And I definitely capitalized on exploring this beautiful country.
Wow, you're a lucky boy. It's a bit similar like my Malaysia story. I also came here and I realized how much opportunity and variety here is. And yeah, I also kind of stayed. But I think it's a bit more difficult to stay here than in Georgia. But
Yeah.
what are you doing there, man? What are you doing in Georgia? Other
Yeah. So I
than
do.
partying along, and I mean, you still you're in business, right?
Yeah. So I have multiple businesses. I have Global Career, which
Oh,
is a best-selling book, but it's also the fastest way for people to get started from either remote working, freelancing, or entrepreneurship. So we help in a variety of different ways. We help on the one side with my book, it shows people kind of the path to if they want to become a digital nomad or somebody who's remote working or building their business while they travel. It kind of checks all those boxes. Then we have a kind of one-on-one program that's called Copy Sharks, where we teach people how to get started with freelance writing. And
oh.
within 6 weeks, you can start making money as a freelancer. And yeah, some people have like quit their jobs and within a couple months moved out to Thailand. And I've had the pleasure of meeting up with these people. So it's been a really fast kind of transition. And then I also do the acquisition side. So I was employee number 4 at Empire Flippers, do a lot of
Oh yeah, yeah,
personal
yeah.
acquisitions for online businesses where I'm acquiring my own profit producing assets and then working on scaling these businesses. So I have a small portfolio. And then I also help on the buy and sell side. So people who are looking to do it for the first time and, helping sellers exit and prepare their business for sale. So this is kind of all it, but it all kind of falls under one umbrella, which is Global Career. So that's basically what I'm up to, and been traveling and working around the world. So it's been definitely a fun adventure.
Amazing, man. So you're actually and still an Empire Flipper privately, so to say. Are you still engaged with Empire Flippers?
So I exited Empire Flippers in 2020. I had hit my 4-year vesting schedule, and I decided to go all in on my own side hustles. I had an acquisition. I published my book. So after I hit my vesting schedule, I decided to exit. But I still work with them as a brokerage. I'm still bringing them buyers and sellers, and I'm still I just bought a $500,000 software business from them like
Oh,
about 6 months ago. So I still have a lot of good relationships with Justin and Joe and the team over there. So I'm still fairly involved in the space, but just in a different capacity.
mm. For those who don't know Empire Flippers, could you just in 2 sentences explain what they're doing?
Yeah, Empire Flippers is the number one curated marketplace to buy and sell online businesses. So curated is kind of the key word there, meaning they actually investigate the businesses to make sure that they're legitimate. They're checking financial details, verifying expenses, and essentially figuring out, is this business legitimate? Where a lot of other marketplaces don't do anything like that. So it's kind of like buying a car on Craigslist. All of that is on you. But if you have no experience with buying a car or buying an online business, there's probably a lot of stuff you overlook. So I help first time buyers kind of get started in that realm, figuring out what business would be a good fit for their skills and their budget and
Mm.
all these other things that go, all these other complexities that go into buying an online business. But again, it's, when you stack up starting from scratch versus buying, you have a much higher chance of success.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, yeah, it's amazing. Yeah, I know the guys quite well, and I think it's really the place to go if you want to acquire a business or sell a business. It's yeah, they're doing an amazing job doing all these background checks and also guiding sellers along the way. I also had an experience with them. Amazing. So, I mean, that's a lot of stuff. So, you write the book, you help people how to become digital nomads, you are running your own businesses and flipping them once in a while. You are still working with Empire Flippers. That's a lot of stuff, man. And I find it amazing. I mean, I think to me, you are the entrepreneur guy. Like the amazing version of an entrepreneur who's actually running several businesses, who knows, who understands the acquisition and the selling part, has gone through this process. I mean, I did this once, and it was an amazing. To me, it was like, oh my god, to go through this process of selling a business. That was my experience. Was really amazing. I mean, you learn so many things. You learn, what it's like. Somebody looking at your stuff, and they could just walk away. They could be the competitor. So it has some scary parts, but it's also very inspiring to see what you can do when you actually build and sell a business, and how you have cash to do something completely different, maybe. So
Right.
it opens a lot of doors if you are in this. I mean, flipping or like buying, acquiring, and selling businesses. There's a lot of things you learn and a lot of opportunities that come out of this, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's just for me, it's been after crypto, starting my own businesses, acquiring businesses that I have a strategic acquisition have always been my best returns.
Yeah.
As fast as getting my ROI back in 8 months on some of these
Wow.
acquisitions, because you see with a marketing background, you see something that the seller has overlooked. Maybe it's a new marketing strategy, maybe it's a pricing psychology strategy, or just a lot of under optimizations. And
Mhm.
it might only be 10 to 15% optimization on one thing, but if you have 5 or 6 of those, it can really scale the business
Oh yeah.
quickly. And so that's kind of what I'm looking for, is under optimized businesses that I can acquire.
Mhm.
And just to give you an example, the software business that we acquired was 10 years old, in a niche that they're ranking, on spot 1 through 6 on all
Oh.
their rankings. And they hadn't changed the prices for 10 years. They didn't have monthly recurring revenue set up. The onboarding process was really clunky. Um, and their paid versus free plan was also not super optimized. So yeah, essentially with this business, we've acquired it, and are transitioning a lot of the pricing and making it easier to onboard people. So it's just been a kind of a lot of layups
Mhm.
to really start growing this business. And yeah, we're on track to get our investment back in a
Wow.
matter of 6 to 8 months.
Shit, you make me feel jealous, man. I mean, I have been thinking about this a lot, but I just found it so scary. I mean, to buy a business, there's a lot of cash involved. And what if I overlook something? What if this guy, what if I'm not an expert on this particular? I mean, I understand marketing and stuff, but today, if I would buy a software business, I mean, there's a lot of moving parts that go into running it and understanding the product exactly, and understanding you have so many things you need to understand. So that is what was holding me back from actually going into this. But I still find it really fascinating, and to me, it's like the king's way to be an entrepreneur. To actually buy and sell businesses and improve
Right.
them, and
So
yeah.
that's the
when I
one thing
when I
worth
grow up,
noting
I did that.
is, yeah, like I'm not a coder. I don't write any code or anything like that. So uh, I think a lot of people get scared away by software because of that. And I would say the experience that I have that's more relevant is knowing how to find an individual or a coder, which I have a lot of experience managing developers, knowing how to find the right person that can actually fill that gap, and kind of maintain and do those improvements. So that's like been my philosophy is I don't need to know how to do all the coding. I just need to know how to manage the person who does that.
Amazing. Well, yeah. When I'm ready to get my next business, then I will talk to you, Mike,
Yeah,
for sure.
feel free to reach out. That's exactly what I'm doing, is helping people
Yeah.
find and acquire these types of businesses.
Yeah, yeah. But now let's deep dive into Mike's childhood, because what I like to do on these episodes is to go back in time and find out, like, how did you get here? How did 10-year-old Mike become the Mike he is today? So tell us about 10-year-old Mike. What was he doing? Where was he? What were his dreams and passions?
Yeah, so love the question. I do think about this occasionally, like what it was like growing up. And to set the stage for people who listen to the audio version, essentially, I grew up in a place called Wildwood, Missouri, in the United States. And if the name doesn't give it away, I'll give you a kind of a description. It's a 6-acre kind of property where I grew up, surrounded by luscious woods, a lot of greenery, lakes, wildlife,
Hmm.
deer, rabbits, turkeys, snakes,
Wow.
spiders, everything in the backyard. And it was the perfect place for a 10-year-old person to kind of get his sense of adventure and exploration.
Oh, yeah.
So within my backyard,
Quite different from
all,
the people, from the kids who are running around and looking at their phones nowadays, huh? So different.
yeah, I look back and I feel so grateful that I kind of have the before and after of technology, because I think my generation is in a unique spot where we essentially grew up um, to a certain age where we didn't really have that impact our day to day childhood, but then we were on the cusp of, okay, at the right place at the right time to utilize this technology to get in business and to kind of capitalize on it. So I feel very grateful for that. But yeah, growing up, I had a older brother who's I'm very close with, a really good friend, somebody who was always up and willing for an adventure out into the wilderness. I had two very loving parents. They were always very type A, ambitious, hardworking people, um, and they instilled that in myself to kind of, yeah, just try to get the most out of life, live life to the fullest, but also give everything you do 110% effort. So I'd say Mike as a 10-year-old was very competitive in athletics. I was very athletic. I played a lot of sports. I was playing sports year round. And if I wasn't playing sports, I was either hanging out with friends. I was a very social kid, very, friendly with meeting kids. And one of the things about my neighborhood is basically it was me and my brother were like the only kids our age. So we kind of had to find friends outside of our neighborhood through sports and other activities. So one of the greatest things we would do is we'd be paintballing in the backyard. My friends would spend the night, and we'd have like sleepovers where we're watching movies, playing paintball in the morning and evening, and then yeah, just getting into a bunch of trouble, like as anything like kids were doing, going out exploring the backyard, which at the time felt 6 acres is still quite a lot, but at the time it felt like unlimited amount of space as a 10-year-old.
Of course.
So yeah, that's some of my fondest memories. And my dad still lives in this house. It's still a part of our family. It's something that every time I go back for Christmas, I really get nostalgic and grateful for having such a beautiful childhood.
Hmm. It sounds really beautiful. Yeah, yeah. I
Yes.
mean, yeah, it's a bit similar to me actually. Yeah, I also grew up in a village in Kyrgyzstan where there was nothing. There was we had a garden with a bunch of uh, pigs and chicken, and we were growing our veggies in the garden, and that was it. I mean, there was no TV, there was no telephone, there was no supermarket, there was nothing. Yeah, so I guess, I mean, very different, I guess, from the United States, but yeah, a similar situation of just being in nature, and
Yeah. It's
that's it.
it's beautiful. I understand why um, my dad doesn't want to leave there because it's just like it's paradise for a lot of people.
Oh, your parents are still there.
Yeah.
Okay. So what was the
So
next thing 10-year-old Mike did? What was the next change in his life?
yeah, good question. Um, I would say 10-year-old Mike was always living in the moment. He wasn't really thinking so far in advance. Maybe like a week or a few days, but mostly I would say like my big important parts of my life were spending time with my family, especially my brother, spending time with friends, and trying to be good at sports in school. It was just kind of like, look, as a kid, you're so busy. You're going to school, then after school, you're playing sports for 3 or 4 hours, and then on the weekends, you're like playing in your backyard, meeting with friends. It was just kind of like every minute you're doing something, and then in between, you're spending time with your family, going on family vacations with them. Like our big thing was road trips down to Florida, so we live like, I don't know, 16 or 18 hours away drive away from the ocean.
Oh,
So it was some long car rides, but yeah, something that I really enjoyed as a kid.
And this situation changed when you finished school, or where did you go from
So
there?
I would say from a 10-year-old, I really had a sense of adventure, being able to explore my backyard. I was always up to just go and explore anywhere, venturing out into the unknown. And I think this kind of mindset in childhood really paved the way for kind of the next step. So I went to university. I studied abroad in Italy when I was a sophomore. And
Oh,
this was
awesome.
kind of that in Bergamo, Italy, outside of Milan.
What brought you to Italy out of all places?
So basically, one of my best friends in college, his name was Mario, and
Oh,
it was
okay.
also like out of the business school options, there was like 3 or 4 different options, and I had a few friends that were going. My friend Mario was Italian, and it just seemed like the perfect option. So we decided to go to Italy, and yeah, just really like opened my eyes to how beautiful it was there. And the summer before was also a big impact. My dad and my brother and we traveled around Italy. So it was like freshman year, summer, going to Italy, going to Europe for the first time, really just falling in love with especially Italy, but all of Europe. And then the next summer, my friend Mario was like, hey, let's study abroad. And so I looked into it and yeah, ended up studying abroad there. Then after the summer, I was like coordinating a lot of meetings with Italian students, with American students, and the study abroad manager suggested I apply to be a manager for the following year. So when I got back to the U.S., I applied, and they didn't select me to be a manager for Italy, but they selected me to be a university manager for the Czech Republic, for Prague. So I was chosen to take a group of students from the University of Missouri. I was teaching at the age of 20. I was teaching at the University of Missouri, and then taking students overseas for the summer. And this was, again, it was just kind of this step-by-step path where my traveling just kind of expanded. I started walking before I ran type situation. And, the first summer, the stipulation was the Prague program only had 7 students the year before. And they said if we didn't get to 15 students, they were going to shut it down. Oh. And I'm like, if they shut it down, I'm out of a job for 2 years. This is a 2-year internship with the university. I'm out of a job. I don't get to go to Europe. And basically, it'll all be for nothing. So we were able to market and sell the program. And this really kind of was my first true experience with like marketing and sales. And so we grew this program from 7 students to 35, which was the maximum it could hold. And then the next year to 45, which again was as many students that could sign up. So they had to start a wait list. So that's basically what bridged the gap. And then I was kind of on the crossroads at my senior year of university. I had another group of students that summer after I graduated. And my mother at this time, she had been diagnosed with breast cancer, and she tragically passed away my senior semester. So it was about a month before finals, and then about a month before I was graduating, and about a month before I was taking 45 students overseas. So it was one of the worst times of my life. It was absolutely devastated. But I just kind of saw like 2 paths where I could say, hey, I can sit here and be sad, but I know my mom would not want that. So I decided to go to Europe, take the students overseas, and then I basically booked a one-way flight with the intention to try to stay over in Europe and find work. And since I had built up a great connection at this university in Prague, that was kind of the first place I started looking. I applied to be a professor at the university. And because, I'd built a relationship, I'd helped them grow their program by a huge amount. They were happy to have me teaching, and I had 2 years of teaching experience for the University of Missouri. So my first job out of college was teaching financial economics at a university in Prague, and that was just kind of all in English. So there was an international part of the university taught in English. So Yeah, that was like my light bulb moment where, hey, I can travel and continue growing my career while doing something I love and not putting my life on pause. You know, it's a lot of times people think to travel for a year, you just have to like quit work and then come back and have a big gap. But I kind of figured out a way where I could travel while still growing my career, getting experience. And yeah, I loved living in Prague. It's still one of my favorite cities in the world, one of the most beautiful cities in the world still to this day. And yeah, when I was living there, I traveled to one new country every month because it's so central. You can be in like 5 countries in 4 hours, and yeah, it was a really great place to be based out of. But essentially, I eventually I kind of pivoted to wanting to work online, and essentially I got jobs that allowed me to work remotely, and then I started building my own companies that I could work remotely. And yeah, that was it didn't happen overnight. It took years and years to figure out, and that's kind of what my book is about how people can build their own global careers and probably take a faster path than what took me a decade to figure out.
Oh, so it's also telling your story. Your book is about your story and how you became so. Yeah, so that's great. So where can I buy your book?
Yeah, so the easiest place to go is globalcareerbook.com. It's
Yeah.
on Amazon is the main place, but it's available on Audible as well for
Oh,
all
you
the
have an audio
audio.
visual version.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so
Oh, that's
it's
great for that one. I'm a big listener.
yeah, so there's a definitely a good listen on there, and yeah, the feedback's been good. I I'm so happy. Like when I first published it, one person wrote a review is like, hey, I didn't know you could move to Australia as an American. You just like this book changed my life. I'm moving there. I just booked my tickets. And I was like, man,
Yeah.
that
Wow.
it was all worth it because that was the only purpose of this book was to help people. And
Yeah, yeah.
it could have stopped there, but it went on to really help thousands of people already. And I'm trying to turn those thousands into millions of people with a positive
Wow.
impact on building or just presenting an alternative path to building an international career or building a life that allows you more flexibility.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's amazing. The one part that I'm missing here is if you teach as a professor in Prague, how do you go from being a professor to being an entrepreneur working remotely? I mean, that is quite a stretch, right? I mean, not many professor and like people in this position go and just open a remote business, right?
Yeah, so there's definitely a lot of years in between that. Basically, in 2011 was when I started working as a professor, and I did see that the path as a academic was just not for me. I think it's an amazing position because you don't have to I wasn't working 70 hours like I was at startups, so it was a really great work-life balance and a good income, but I just didn't feel super challenged, and that's why I decided to leave and kind of pursue other stuff. So my next job after college or after teaching as a professor was working on the Wells Fargo trading floor. That was a contracted job, was not a great job at all, but then it kind of opened up the next step, which was I moved to Australia, to Sydney, and took advantage of their working holiday visa, which allows you to work for any Australian company. And during this time, I was able to work remotely for a tech startup in Australia. And most people go to Australia, they do backpacker jobs. But I went in with like the mentality that I'm going to find a real job that pays a good salary and like has some flexibility. So that kind of was my first fully remote job. And then that just kind of set the bar. It was like, once you're working remote, it's kind of a one-way street where you don't really want to go back. And again, I was doing sales and marketing. I wasn't a developer. So in 2015, at this time, it was still kind of rare to have a remote job that was in that kind of industry or realm. And then I loved my job when I was working in Australia, but a professor that I worked with in the university in Prague became kind of a mentor for me. And he suggested I apply for an MBA scholarship in South Korea. And again, I studied business, finance, and business. So I really had a passion for wanting to build my own business at some point. So I figured an MBA would be good. I got a full ride scholarship to go study in South Korea. So I ended up quitting my job in Australia to go pursue this because it was just too good of an offer. You know, it was a free education. They were paying for my flights, my books, and setting me up with a job. So it was just one of these things that was like too good to turn down. Yeah. So I studied my MBA in South Korea for about 2.5 years. And during this time, I built my own website. I started doing freelance work and writing for a local radio station there. And yeah, essentially after that, I kind of realized like, hey, there's a lot to this online business space. And then, during this time in Korea, I met somebody who was working at Empire Flippers at the time. And that's kind of how I found out about them.
I was about to ask, how did you end up with Empire Flippers? You met someone in Korea.
Yeah, so I met a guy who was working for them in South Korea, and we just became friends. I would say about 6 to 8 months later, I'd moved to New Zealand, worked 6 months there for a startup. They ran out of money, and so I spent a couple months traveling. I'd also run out of money from traveling, so I was looking for jobs, and I was reaching out to my network to see if anybody was hiring, and he sent me an application for Empire Flippers because they just had started to hire for a sales and marketing position, which was just a perfect fit for both of us, right? So I got hired around 2016, moved out to Southeast Asia, and was living with Justin and Greg from Empire Flippers in a really nice like penthouse, and we were just building the company, and we helped build it from, there's like 5 of us at the time to hundreds of employees all around the world, $120 million worth of deals brokered. So it was just like a really fascinating kind of time there. And, around 2018 is when I published my book. In 2019, I had my first software acquisition. So I just started building my own portfolio, my own businesses, and essentially just decided like, if I want to have a life that I have full control over, I need to build it myself. And that's kind of where I'm at now, is building my own empire.
Oh man, I really admire what you have done and what you have accomplished. It's really inspiring and really amazing. Yeah. I mean, to be in this position where you really understand businesses to an extent where you can make all these good decisions, which one to buy and how to improve it. I think that's where you really get the entrepreneurial badge. I mean, you are the king of entrepreneurs, so to say. Yeah, that's amazing. That's really cool.
Well, I appreciate that.
Yeah, man. I mean, I would really like to pick your brain, but let's not go too far here. But I mean, one thing I would really like to know, what would you say are the biggest challenges for online businesses as of today? If this question makes sense. I mean, we can narrow it down to, but what do you see happening? What are people struggling most with?
Yeah. So do you mean in terms of acquiring online businesses, or just, starting
of growing an
growing
online
it?
business, of running
Yeah.
an online, like an e-com business, for example?
Yeah. So the biggest issue I see is most solopreneurs, they have blinders on, where they aren't getting any advice from somebody who's 2 or 3 steps ahead of them. And I think a lot of times people don't see kind of the faults in their business because they're not talking to the right people. And I think there's a lot of ways you can get feedback for a fairly, free or easy price. You can hire a coach, somebody who's very well known in this space, to help you improve the business. Or you can just get feedback from your customers to see what features they're missing, what sort of reasons they're canceling or not, using their business. But I'd say to have a successful online business, you need to be good at sales, marketing, and like fulfillment or customer service or product. And most people don't have that, and they don't hire somebody for those roles, and they try to do it themselves. So if you're not great at those 3 things, you kind of need to either find a partner that is, or hire somebody that's a good fit for that. So that's kind of like the areas where I see a lot of people struggling is, their first few hires, or just kind of improving it. The biggest thing I see is most people aren't charging enough or haven't tested pricing enough. For example, this business we bought, they haven't changed the prices for 10 years. That's insane to me. Like, prices for everything else have gone up. Like, his hosting prices have gone up. His, like, all these other, like, software features have gone up exponentially over the past 10 years, but he hadn't passed any of those expenses on to the customers. So that's one thing where I think a lot of people get scared of changing. But if you do the math on these things, if you double, triple, quadruple your prices, and the conversions would have to exponentially drop as well. But if you have, if you're charging 4 times more for a product, but your conversions only drop by 20%, you're still making a lot more money, and you're having to do a lot less fulfillment. So it's one of those things that I think a lot of people need to test more than they are. And you don't have to do it every month, but I would say, like, once a year, once a quarter, you should be testing your prices to see how the conversions and overall everything is impacted.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. A/B testing, yeah. I mean, in marketing, nothing is set in stone. It's an art form. So we have to test, we have to check, we have to make assumptions, but then we also have to question them all the time, right? So it's very expensive to have a big ego and want to be right, and and like ignore like the facts that are jumping in your face. But yeah, I totally agree with this testing part, the technique, which is so important. Yeah. Where do you see the biggest opportunities at the moment? If you had to start a new business, what would you do?
Good question. If I were just getting started from scratch, and it depends how much money, experience, a lot of different factors. But let's just say, like, the average person that's looking to build their own business, I would say, one, if you're dead set on building your business, I would try freelancing, because that's something that you can kind of learn a lot of skills at before you jump ship. So once that's working, you can kind of jump ship and start, like, moving on a linear path. If you're not interested in freelancing, then I would try some type of coaching or service business, because a lot of times you can do all the marketing yourself, you can do all the fulfillment, and you can make $10,000 a month just by doing coaching, or building some sort of service, SEO agency, social media marketing agency. It doesn't matter. It could be very specific, like just becoming an editor for YouTubers. You find 2 or 3 editors, and then you also find the clients, and then you kind of take the cut in between. So I would say that's like the best business to start, because it doesn't require a ton of capital, and you can market it for essentially free by doing outreach to people. So if you have a huge budget, then I would say probably software is kind of where I see, like, all the big entrepreneurs are going, all the people who are kind of realizing that having that monthly recurring revenue is almost essential now for a business to stay afloat, because each month comes, you're not having to start from zero, right? You have that MRR that it's also stacking and building on top of each other, and it really snowballs over time.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. We haven't mentioned the AI word yet, which is kind of unavoidable.
Yeah.
Do you see potential? Have you had any kind of success playing with any of the AI tools, and where have you found a way to make it work in your business and make your life easier?
So yeah, I use ChatGPT 4 every day. It's absolutely revolutionary. If people aren't playing around with it, it's $20 a month. Cancel your Netflix membership and get that, because you'll make a lot more money. So the way that I utilize it is helping write emails, helping write social media. I haven't been using it for SEO content, because I'm not 100% convinced that it's going to do well. There's a lot of initial tests from people that are way more experienced in the SEO realm saying that they have full AI written websites ranking and bringing in lots of traffic. So it's initially great. I think the final consensus is if the content is good, it's going to rank, but there still needs to be initial like original content for the AI to learn and adapt. So I think there's kind of room for both authentic creation of content and also AI content. But yeah, I use it every day. I have it, I'll put in a brief or I'll put in a post that I've written and I'll have it be improved. Or if I'm doing SEO writing, I'll say, hey, does my article that I wrote, does it check all of these boxes for my original format that I wanted to check? So yeah, there's a million different ways to do it. Everyone's workflow is going to be a little bit different, but yeah, it's very fascinating and powerful. And if you weren't that impressed with GPT 2 or 3, I honestly was not super impressed. I like to compare GPT 4 to like HD Blu-ray versus like a VHS tape. It's that big of a difference. It's massive.
So much difference.
Yes.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I think these $20 are well invested, in ChatGPT.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, but then there's such a whole universe of other platforms and tools, and but this is a conversation which is for another podcast, I guess. But yeah, it's great to hear that it's already working for you in your business and you're using it on a daily basis. And yeah, I guess that's what every entrepreneur right now should be doing on a daily basis. And,
it's very powerful.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, there's a million different software, but most of them are built off of GPT. So it's crazy to see what this is kind of like. I don't know. A lot of people compare it to when the internet was released, and like, wouldn't you want to like experience that and get to know how to use the internet if it just got released? So I think it's crazy that people aren't utilizing it more.
Yeah. I think only the percentage was 16% of. No, I think I got the numbers wrong. But not so many people in the US, for example, have ever used ChatGPT. I think 14% have used ChatGPT so far in the United States as of today. That's what I heard recently. I might be wrong. But yeah, dude, this was an amazing session. It was so good to catch up with you. Sometimes I feel so lucky to do this podcast stuff because I get to catch up with people like you, which I don't know if we would have done otherwise, So it's a really cool thing to do. If you have any closing words, any summaries of your books that you would like to share, please go ahead.
Yeah, I would say if you're listening to this, don't hesitate to get in touch with me. I'm very active on LinkedIn. Instagram's probably the best place because my LinkedIn is absolutely slammed. I get about, 100 or 200 messages a week. So reach out on Instagram. Yeah, it's wild. One of the perks of writing for Forbes and Entrepreneurs, you get tons of people trying to pitch you stuff. But yeah, that's also, I would say, go to globalcareerbook.com. You can see all my socials on there. Reach out to me. Instagram's probably the best place, or via email. And yeah, I mean, if you're looking to buy or sell an online business or to just get started with, working and traveling, I'd love to help you. And again, if you're looking to get started, there's an expression my dad always used to tell me, and it's a famous one. The best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago. The next best time is today. So I live by that. Be proactive, get started as soon as possible. That's one kind of thing I wish I would have done is got started earlier. And I hope people listening to this take that as inspiration to kind of get started today.
Oh yeah, man. That is very inspiring. I can only say amen to that. Amen to that. And thank you so much, Mike. It was a pleasure to have you. Let's stay in touch and all the best with your book.
Yeah, thanks, man. Let me know if you're ever over here in Georgia, and we'll grab a coffee or some wine.
I will do. Until then, man. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye.